We did the middle. We did the front. Today we do the back end. Giggity goo. Of fantasy drafts, this is my preferred, not full team, but preferred names typically available to you in your drafts if you have a draft pick between slots 9 and 12. We're going to do the first 10 rounds. Again, by the time you get to the end of that, names are flying off the board, so this is probably only useful for like the first 7 or 8 rounds, but we'll go a little bit longer just in case, just like we did with the other ones, so that you guys have basically a pool of players. Oh no, your random draft occurred. The order is set. You got pick number 10. Crap, what am I looking for? These guys. These are who you're looking for. Hopefully that gives you just a nice, calm roadmap. And again, you don't have to get all these dudes, and how they mix and match is still kind of up in the air. But if you get a lot of these guys in some order, in some grouping, obviously pay attention to your categories, but you'll be generally okay. Welcome, one and all, to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm your host, Dan Vespris. It is episode... This is the second one we're doing here on Wednesday. We have 6 days until the start of the season, and I have a ton of drafts that are about to happen over the next, 4.5 of them. And I'm betting you guys do as well. So come hang with me on Twitter, at Dan Vespris. Follow Old Man Squad on Twitter as well. Old Man Squad Fantasy? Yeah, over on Instagram. I can figure this out. And please, whatever you do, before you do anything else, pause your brain. YouTubers, hit that like button. Everybody just stop and hit the subscribe button. It's a big deal. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please drop that 5-star review. That actually does go a long way towards showing up, I guess, as one of sort of like the premier results when people start to search for a fantasy basketball podcast. I think most of you know the drill by now, but just in case you don't, we're looking for the favorite values at the different junctures in the draft. So like if you have pick number 9, we'll look at pick 9 and guys available near there, and we'll look at those that are available towards the beginning of the second round, end of the third, beginning of the fourth, end of the fifth, beginning of the sixth, and so on and so forth, so that the players that we talk about today are ones that you really, truly do have a legitimate shot of getting. It's not going to be a show where I'm like, hey, here's my favorite first rounder for you with pick number 10. Take Shea. Duh, he's not going to be there. And just the same as when we did the show where we were talking about what if you have an early pick, I'm not going to tell you in that show to take Steph Curry in the second round because he ain't going to be there at pick 22. So we're trying to keep this pretty damn honest. I'll mention where I had to fudge the numbers just a little bit. I typically tried to fudge them in sort of the reach direction, meaning I didn't like somebody at the end of the 6th or something, beginning of the 6th. So we can grab someone from the middle of that 6th round because technically you can always take somebody that's available farther down the board. Typically, it's the ones earlier that won't be there for you in this exercise and then also in real life. This is, as I've said on the other shows, I'll just repeat myself, this is a nice exercise. We're going to isolate decent players that occur at set intervals during your draft. The intervals we are using are based on Yahoo's third board because that is inarguably the most impactful board in how fantasy drafts get created. First round, James Harden. He's got a pre-rank of 12. The numbers in parentheses are the pre-ranks on Yahoo right now, meaning he's typically available with the last couple picks of the first round. He is my favorite among them, and honestly, I don't think it's all that close. The other guys going in that range are guys like Jason Tatum, who should be fine this year, Anthony Edwards, Trae Young, Harden. If you go a little farther, you go to Steph Curry, Donovan Mitchell, stuff like that. I think Harden just has the most appeal there. Kawhi is banged up to start the season. James has Trae Young-like fantasy stats with maybe a little bit worse scoring, but almost definitely better rebounding, almost definitely better shot blocking. And so you don't set yourself so far behind the 8 ball in those two categories. Whereas, what if Trae Young averages like 27, 28 points a game and Harden is only at like 24 or 25? Okay, fine. Maybe you need to get a slightly better score in the second, third, fourth round or whatever. But what I think Harden's going to do well that Trae Young doesn't is, in my opinion, even harder to find when you're trying to lean into that build, if that makes any sense. And before we get to our second rounder, I suppose it's important to remember that we are brought to you by Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, matchup breakdown, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games are available at Bet Online. They have the largest catalog of odds on everything from football to baseball to hockey to hoops to political props. And when the games are over, Bet Online has an online casino. Head on down there, get in, play a little blackjack, play a little poker, unwind with one of over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering, Bet Online. The game starts here. Second rounder. I don't think we need to spend that much time on Harden. You guys have heard me talk about it. Is Donovan Mitchell. And this one was actually a little bit of a tougher call because the guys available at the beginning of the second round are very different in what they do. There's Donovan Mitchell, there's Steph Curry, there's Booker, there's Sabonis, and then obviously if you wanted to reach a little farther down, you could do that as well. I went Donovan Mitchell in the hopes that he stays relatively healthy this year because of all the guys in that range. He has far and away the best per game appeal. He was number 8 per game last year, 1.8 steals, 6+ assists, 26+ scoring, 3+ three-pointers, terrific free throw shooter. Really not that bad on the field goal side at 46% on super high volume. He actually does pair relatively well with Harden because you get the scoring and the steals to kind of lean into that. You get 5 boards out of Donovan Mitchell. So your rebounding is not that bad when you put those two guys together. Harden was at 5 last year. It seems like that's a pretty attainable number for him again this season. So your 2 guards get you to 10 boards already. And I know it's not Luka who gets you 9 all by himself, but compared to someone like a Tyrese Halliburton who's at 4, Trae Young who's probably going to be between 3 and 4, Freddie VanVleet later on who's under 4, Maxi's under 4, even Steph and De'Aaron Fox are at 4.5. There's just a little bit of a rebounding mini edge with Donovan Mitchell. But more than anything, the reason you're taking him there is because he has that big per game potential. And you just hope that for the first time in Cleveland, he can last through the year relatively healthy. That's the big thing that's hanging over this Donovan Mitchell pick. And what makes it hard, I think, in my mind, because if you're worried about Donovan Mitchell's games played number, Steph Curry's right there as, lately at least, I believe a safer play. And I know that like you could make the argument, before this last year, there were a couple seasons where Steph wasn't playing all that much. The Warriors were kind of in like a semi-half, not full rebuild, but like they were gassed. But they need Steph to play 70+ games to have any chance of competing. And I think that that's the intention there. With Cleveland, they actually don't need Donovan Mitchell to play 70 games to compete. They put up a perfectly solid regular season last year, thanks to a half-injured Darius Garland, but just like having a lot of decent players and defending really well. And Mobley's good, and Allen's good, and LeVert, not fantasy good, but pretty good replacement type guy when you're missing one of your gunners. Cavs are going to win games with or without Donovan Mitchell. They'll obviously win more with him. The Warriors won't win games without Steph Curry. They'll bumble their way into a win or two when somebody pops off that you wouldn't expect. But he is their everything, because without him there, teams could just dare that team to take him one-on-one. They'll switch everything. Who's going to create for the Warriors when Steph isn't running 1,000 miles a game and the defense is all in shambles because they're trying to figure out who the hell is going to chase Steph all night long? Not that losing Klay Thompson changes anything like that. The Warriors had this problem last year. And that's, again, great. That's the tie-in. He played 74 games because they needed him to. So could you go Steph there? Yeah, and he'll probably pop up here on the honorable mentions list in just a few minutes down the line. Okay, then let's keep trucking. Who the hell's third on our list? And this is where you have to bounce a pretty good distance because beginning of the second round to end of the third is effectively a 24-pick gap. And in the third round, we're going Jalen Johnson, who has a pre-rank of 34 on Yahoo right now. And basically, lately at least, in almost every draft that I've seen, he's fallen to closer to 40, which surprises the crap out of me because I think Jalen Johnson's going to have an excellent year. He was number 43 last season. in this sort of first half of his monster breakout. This dude can do it all. He can score, he can rebound, he can pass, he can steal, he can block shots. He has a good field goal percent. Okay, his free throw number isn't all that great. But we're talking about a guy that if the Hawks shovel a little more usage onto him and get him up to 14 and a half shots, this is a dude that could get near 19 or 20 points a ball game. I know the threes are not falling at a record clip, but 1.3, does that become 1.5, 1.6, something like that? Add 3 to 4 points, 0.3 threes, half an assist. We're talking about that's a big leap forward. And he's got to stay healthy, unquestionably. But that across the board production from Jalen Johnson, it doesn't take that much to get him from 40s ranked to 30s ranked. I think this is a guy who cruises into the 30s. And let's call it a magical universe where instead of just 1.5 extra shots per game, let's say he gets 2.5 extra shots per game. Let's say Jalen Johnson gets up to 15 shots a night. Now you're talking 20 points a game. Just based on the numbers he was putting up last year. You're talking about 20 points a game. You're talking about between 1.5 and 2 3-pointers. You're talking about 9 rebounds. You're talking about over 4 assists a game. That's a huge, huge set of numbers. And everybody's drafting Karl-Anthony Towns in the second round. I get it between those two guys. Cat has the big edge in free throw percent and probably threes as well. But Jalen Johnson is going to beat him up in steals. The blocks will probably be somewhat similar between the two guys, somewhere between 0.8 and 1.1. I don't want to say that Jalen Johnson is like a budget Cat, because Cat's going to get another probably 2.5 rebounds this year, and that's why he's up that high. It's also why I don't think Jalen Johnson ends up in the middle of the second round. But I do think that late 20s, early 30s is well within reach for him. And so I'm happy to take Jalen Johnson towards the end of the third round. It should also be fun on top of the other stuff. And I know that I don't preach fun on the show all that often, but young guy taking on more, this could be the let's get wild year for Jalen Johnson. He's the number 2 on that team. I guess you could say Bogdanovich, but what if he's coming off the bench? It's Trae Young and Jalen Johnson just jacking up shots in that first unit. That's going to be amazing. This kid is so impressive, and we just need him to get through the year healthy, and this will end up being a really, really fun pick. Fourth round, I couldn't find what you'd call a love or a favorite or a breakout type of guy at the beginning of the fourth round. The guys in that range are DeJounte Murray, Bam Adebayo, Evan Mobley, Paolo Banchero, Jimmy Butler, Desmond Bane. You guys have heard me talk about these players. I think Adebayo is a safe center in that range who tends to sit around 50 on a per-game side. DeJounte is probably a 40-something per-game guy. Banchero's a points league dude. Butler is a huge games missed risk that, I'm actually okay with Jimmy Butler in the fourth round. I don't mind it. And then Desmond Bane is almost definitely a fourth rounder. So I went Evan Mobley because I do think that there is a planet where Mobley, with just a little bit of personal growth, can get into the 30s. And he hasn't been there yet. He was number 42 last year. But the outline is all there. And I get it. There's sort of a repetitive nature here of going Jalen Johnson and then Evan Mobley. Those guys are not all that dissimilar from one another. Mobley, better field goal percent, better blocks. Jalen Johnson, slightly better steals and slightly better threes. But a lot of parallels between those two guys. And maybe you don't need to double up on that same general statistical stat set. But I like Mobley because he's a big in semi-traditional big. He gets blocks, but he also gets steals, and his free throw number is not that bad. So again, there's sort of a what if going on here. He only took 11 shots a game last year. He wasn't fully healthy for a lot of the season, only played 30.5 minutes a ball game. What if we're talking about the year now where Mobley comes out and goes back to 34 minutes a ball game? Because the year before, when he played 79 out of 82 games, he played 34 minutes a night. And he averaged 16 points, 9 boards, a little under 3 assists. He was at 2.3 combined defensive stats. And 55-67 were the splits on Mobley that year. But again, I ask you, what if? What if he's now a 58-72 splits guy, but the minutes come back from 30 and a half to 34. Now you're talking about a guy who scores more like 17 points a game, over 9 rebounds, over 3 assists, over 2.3 defensive stats, because you put him out there another 10% of the ball game. You add another roughly 0.2 of a defensive stat if it's somewhat linear. Okay, that's a mid-30s or slightly better per game potential. And again, I'm not predicting like a big Evan Mobley breakout kind of year. Basically, all I want from Mobley is similar efficiency to this past season, but get the minutes back up where they were when he was fully healthy. 33, 34 instead of 30. I think that's conceivable. I think that's within reach. And the nice thing is that for Mobley, even if he still does only play 31 minutes a ball game, we saw last year that he can be a 40s range guy in 30 and a half minutes a night. So we're one like little quarter step away from getting him to this marker. At the halfway point here on our show is Bradley Beal. And this one I struggled with mightily because I was trying really hard to stay close to the actual ADP on these guys. And Beal is technically the very last pick of the 5th round, so he could be mine. I'd probably rather go Jarrett Allen, but Jarrett Allen was technically not in the final 4 names of that 5th round. He was 5th from last at number 56. And I don't really want DeAndre Ayton there. I don't really want to take the shot on Zach LaVine because I do still feel like a lot could go wrong. Brandon Miller is intriguing, but this is too early for me to take him. So I went Beal, even though, frankly, if I had picks 60 and 61, if I had the very last pick of the 5th and the very first pick of the 6th round, I'd probably go Darius Garland and Tobias Harris. Those are my favorite 2 guys in that area. I also like Beal. And I like Mikal Bridges also in that range. And if you go farther down the board, you guys know I like D'Angelo Russell and Isaiah Hartenstein. But if I'm not doing the reaching thing, if I'm trying to stay really close to the exercise we're doing on today's podcast, then I got to stay within that buffer, that like 8-9 pick range. And so I went Bradley Beal, who I'm not upset about taking at 60 because down the stretch last year, once Beal got healthy, he was actually a top 30 producer. Admittedly, his 54% from the field, probably not a long-term proposition, but he averaged 18 points, 4.5 boards, almost 6 assists, 2.3 threes, over a steal, 0.8 blocks on 54-89 hyper-efficient splits. You guys know I love me some ultra-efficient guards. Beal, believe it or not, even though he scores 18 points a game, is actually a great punt points option in this range because he provides positive percentages from the guard spot, specifically the field goal number, and gets you some boards, some assists, some steals, some blocks, some threes without hurting you anywhere. That's such a big deal when you get some sort of volume guy who has both strong percentages. That's great for punt points. He also works even if you're trying to score, although, again, 18 points per game is not like a through-the-roof sort of number. But he's going to be hyper efficient. He has been for multiple years. The 54 was high, but 50 to 52 range is actually well within striking distance for him. And so, like, from a who's going to beat their per game mark around here, 9 cat, Beal's a really good choice. Also, by the way, he was at 2.5 turnovers a game during that stretch. So if you were an 8 cat, he was even better. Early 3rd rounder by 8 cat, Beal, during that stretch. I guess it was mid 3rd and 9th also. In any event, we're talking about a guy that could jump a round or 2 from that 60 range. Health issues are there. I can't deny that. That would be somewhat disingenuous. But again, if I'm going to stick with the exercise today, which is to be near the numbers that we should have of a late draft slot in the 5th round, I'll go Beal as the last one. I already told you some of the other guys I like. Darius Garland is going to be the choice in the 6th round. Tobias Harris, and you'll see him on the honorable mentions, but he's the runner-up in this zone. Garland is a guy who just wasn't healthy last year. He was number 109. His turnovers were trash. His field goal percent was trash. His overall involvement on a night-to-night basis was trash. 14.8 shots per game. It just wasn't enough. After the previous year, he was at 16.4. And it's not like a bunch of dudes came in and were like, Garland, your stuff is my stuff now. He just wasn't there. You know, he played 35 and a half minutes Not this past season, but the prior one. He was at 33 this year because he just wasn't healthy. So we're talking about a guy where, again, the assumption is you're going to be able to add 6 to 8% of stuff just from being out there, the number of minutes that his body is supposed to be out there. He'll be good at assists. He'll probably get you over 7 assists a ball game. The scoring should tick back up into the 19-20 range. Threes will tick back up over around 2.5. Steals will be at 1.3 or higher. And so the problem, of course, is that last year in 9-cat, because of the terrible turnovers, he was outside the top 100. I think we're looking at a guy that in 9-cat is probably going to be pretty close to this draft position of like 60 to 70 range. But 8-cat, he's going to be much better than that. And so we are fun hunting a little bit here. Also, Jalen Johnson, Evan Mobley, Bradley Beal. I don't think these guys are particularly high turnover dudes. So, yes, James Harden's going to be pretty high, and Donovan Mitchell. Okay, James Harden's going to be very high. Donovan Mitchell is going to be relatively high, but not that much, like compared to some of the other second rounders. My team can take a turnover hit in the 6th round to buttress the big assists I got early. Harden with, I would think, 10 plus. Donovan Mitchell probably around 5 to 6.5 range. Johnson will probably be around 4. Mobley around 3. That's good for a big man. Beal around 5. And now we get another 7 plus. And so assists are in good shape. Steals are in good shape. That's a team that I need to be winning that. Blocks are not great. Mobley's the one decent shot blocker here, but Harden was half a block. Beal's better than half a block. Donovan Mitchell's not horrendous in that, not good. And Jalen Johnson's probably around 0.8, 0.9. So if I'm thinking about actual team build, I'm only like one shot blocker away from being pretty damn well-rounded here. But let's see what I do next. Well, 7th round, I had to fudge the numbers. I told you I wasn't going to fudge the numbers unless I absolutely had to. 7th round, I had to fudge the numbers. And the reason I had to do that is because you're at the end of the 7th round in this, right, end of the odd rounds, beginning of the even round. So that's a round pick 84, right? Yeah. And the guys going at 84 are an injured Trey Murphy. I'm counting earlier now. Kuzma was 83. Michael Porter Jr. is 82, which is fine. OG Anunoby 81. Keegan Murray at 80. I am not moved by any of these guys. And you could look farther down the board, but the beginning of the 8th round is also a little bit of a graveyard with Brook Lopez, Jonas Valanciunas, Mark Williams, who's hurt, Caruso, who's going much later than that. You can take him there, but you don't have to. Jalen Suggs, who's also going much later than that. So there's this like board versus reality thing going on, end of 7, early 8, where I had to fudge the numbers a little bit. So I went Jordan Poole at 79. Look, I'll be honest with you guys. If you have the 12th pick, Poole's not going to be there for you at 84. Sorry. Which means you either go Michael Porter Jr. and play it very safe, or you look down into the next window, but because those guys are not all that useful, you almost have to keep going down the board. So what do? This is honestly my least favorite spot in any of these, like, who do we take at the different juncture type of shows. This is my least favorite because there's no one there. Remember how that used to be? We talked about this like a month ago on the last Yahoo board. I think the spot I hated in that one was like the middle of the 5th round. Well, it's shifted now. Now it's the end of the 7th. I detest the players ranked around the end of the 7th round. And if this was a real draft, I would just tell you to go take someone you like from even farther down the board. Just, reach a little bit. Take a Zubats at 85. Or take a frickin' CJ McCollum, who's not exciting at all. Or take an Austin Reeves at 85. Or take a Walker Kessler at 85. Like, just reach. Because these guys in here are trash. But we'll say Jordan Poole. I'm not even going to talk about Jordan Poole because, like, you might get him if you had the 9th pick. So the 9th pick of the 7th round would be 81. 182, 83, 84. Yeah. You might get him at 81. That's a possibility. 84, I don't think. Don't bank on it. Michael Porter Jr., you're probably going to have a shot at 81. You might have a shot at him at 84. And if you can't get those guys, then you just keep going. And so my 8th round guy, the beginning of the 8th round, the one dude in there that I kind of like is Jakob Poeltl at 86, who's very much the like, oh, you didn't get Isaiah Hardenstein, just go get Jakob Poeltl instead. Because Poeltl is effectively Hardenstein, but a worse free throw shooter. Their other stuff is going to be very similar. Hardenstein, a little better steals, a little weaker shot blocking, but like if you're going to compare center types, those two guys are extraordinarily similar. And you can look at the numbers from last year. Poeltl averaged 1 minute more than Hardenstein. He scored 3 points more, but that's because of the team he was on. But they both shot between 64 and 66% from the field. They were both in the 8s in rebounds. They were both in the 2s in assists. Hardenstein was at 2.3 defensive stats on a 1.2, 1.1 splits. Jakob Poeltl was at 2.2 defensive stats on a 0.7, 1.5 steal and block split. And then again, the big difference is Hardenstein shot 71% from the free throw line and Poeltl shot 55. But neither one of them went there very often. And that's why last year they were only separated by 15 spots. But of course, part of that, and this has to go into the calculus for both of these guys, is we think Hardenstein's going to do more this year. We also likely think Poeltl's going to do more this year. When he finally got a little more consistent run, he was able to, and then he got shut down. But like the second half of the season in 26 minutes a game, he was number 53. The shot blocking went up, the steals went up, a lot of stuff just trended in the right direction. If he gets 27 minutes a game, like both of those guys could be top 50 in 27 minutes a game. So if you don't get Hardenstein, Poeltl is a pretty good backup option. Just make sure that you have sufficient free throw shooting to cover up that potential negative. And now, I've got Poeltl and I've got Evan Mobley, and I'm not going to beat the teams that have Wemby or, Gobert, like a punt free throw team. But if we're talking about head-to-head, like I could get this team into probably, 3rd, 4th, 5th position in expected shot blocking. And it's only going to take maybe 1, maybe 2 guys late here that get a few blocked shots. But again, I don't know what the hell you do about that 7th round pick. That's a mystery. If you go Jakob Poeltl there, then you got to reach down and take someone from the next group, like an Austin Reeves or our 9th rounder, Walker Kessler. And this one fell right into our laps. Unfortunately, and his ADP is now higher than this, so you're not going to probably get Kessler at 107. But for this exercise, he's right there. His pre-rank is 107. I think we're looking at a significant breakout year, meaning if you're in a league where other people are also thinking this about Kessler, the other guys in that range, like let's say you ended up having to do Poeltl at the end of the 7th round, and you had to do like Draymond Green or McCollum or Austin Reeves at the beginning of the 8th, who the hell's left for you in the 9th? If Kessler's not there, the other guys near him on the board are not super fun, but you could push into the 10th round because there are 3.5 even guys in the front half of the 10th round, and I like all of them. And I'll show you the first one here just so you know where we're going with it next. But a couple more points on Walker Kessler. He's looked amazing in the preseason so far. And every night it seems like Utah sort of pushes more and more into the era of the Kessler. He played 28 minutes last night in a preseason game. That would have been Tuesday night at 10 points, 9 boards, and 4 blocked shots. He also, by the way, made his free throws, although I wouldn't necessarily bank on that happening every day. And this was going up against Domantas Sabonis, who, mind you, had a massive game, but like Kessler only picked up 1 foul. So he's out there and he's using his stature better. And John Collins is being a little bit marginalized. By the way, don't draft John Collins this year. I think it could be a little bit of a rocky ride. Kessler's a guy that I could very much draft in the 80s. Like, I'm willing to do some reaching on him because I think we're getting double-digit rebounds and over 2 blocks a game. I think there's a damn good shot we get, Rudy Gobert type numbers, lower scoring. Well, what the hell? How many points did Rudy Gobert average last year before I say that? Gobert was at, where are you, Rudy? I know you're in that like 40 to 60 range, but why can't I find you? Hello? Come on, Dan. Figure this. There, 53. He was at 14 and 13 with 2.1 blocks. Like, But I don't think Kessler gets to 13 rebounds. He probably doesn't get to 14 points either. But you could see like 12 and 10.5 with more blocks than Rudy. And maybe don't go to the line as often. That would be also a small request. But here's the thing. So Naz Reid is our 10th rounder. His pre-rank is 110. You saw him on my updated breakouts board. And I'll throw the honorable mentions up on there as well. Because what if everything on your list gets pushed down a click? What if you can't get Jordan Poole and you go Poeltl in the 8th or Poeltl in the 7th, Kessler in the 8th, in the 9th round? You could go Naz Reid, or you could go Gafford, or you could go Amen Thompson. There's 3 guys that are literally lined up, boom, 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 one after the other there. And having a pick close to a turn like what we're assessing here gives you that possible set of targets, because these guys are going in that like 105 to 115 range, and you have 2 picks in that range if you have a late draft slot. The end of the 9th round is 108, 109. That's your 9-10 turn. A couple of these guys might get picked early. What if Walker Kessler's off the board? Okay, you go, Naz and Gafford. What if Walker Kessler and Naz Reid are off the board? Okay, you go Gafford and Amen Thompson. Sorry, I did. You guys know what I meant. I said the wrong name, but you know what I meant. Like, you just keep pushing it down. Luckily, there are 4 guys between 107 and 112 that we like. That's a really nice spot. Now, if they all got plucked, okay, we go to our sleepers and flyers board and try to find something else to make hay with here, because to me, then you're into the next group. But Tyus Jones at 113 is not a bad option there. Zach Edey at 118 isn't a bad option if you want to keep going farther down the list. Horford at 127, Josh Hart at 126, Conley at 129. So there are some other options there. But again, for this exercise, I thought it was more relevant to sort of stick with guys near the pre-rank, where the pre-rank suggests that they should be. Honorable mentions, and we talked about a bunch of these guys as we were weaving our way through. Steph Curry at 13, if you don't want Donovan Mitchell in the 2nd round. I think those 2 guys are not fully interchangeable. With Donovan Mitchell, you get the big steals number, which I believe this year is proving to be a more important stat to get a nice one player chunk of early, because the other big steals guys are all going between 90 and 105, and so you almost have to get one if you don't get an early steals dude. Jalen Williams, if he happens to be there near the end of the 3rd round, but he's going earlier than that, so that's why I bumped him down to honorable mention, because I don't think you're going to get him at like 35, 36, whereas Jalen Johnson is generally there. If you don't want to go Evan Mobley in the 4th, if you don't think that it's breakout year time, Derrick White is a really safe 4th round pick who's looked amazing. He's just doing more and more with no Porzingis for half the season. We could legitimately see like a mid-2nd round Derrick White for 3 months. So that's awesome, even if he likely slows as the Celtics get healthy and then guys start doing the rest day nonsense. Jarrett Allen was the backup option to Bradley Beal. I didn't put Jarrett Allen there because he's 5th, as we mentioned, from the end of that round. I don't know that you're going to get him at pick 59 or something like that, where you might get him at, 55, 56, even 57. It does seem like he's probably going to be gone before that round's over. But again, if Allen's gone and maybe you don't want Bradley Beal, you can go Garland at the end of the 5th round and go Tobias Harris to start the 6th. So there was a couple of kind of backup options there. Tobias, I love a lot at the beginning of the 6th round. Mikal Bridges, I think, is a pretty good early 6th round play. But again, you're going to be hunting some efficiency there, because I think we're going to get this weird like blend of Brooklyn Bridges, and Phoenix Bridges. And I'm sort of less excited about the per game appeal than I am the totals appeal. That's probably more a direction I go if I've taken a bunch of risks early, which in this particular draft, I don't think I did. Donovan Mitchell is probably the riskiest play on the board. You guys might notice this is not as old a team as I'm used to drafting. It's just where the chips fall. That's probably why I don't want a late draft pick this year, because the olds are typically going mid-round or lining up more with, like, if you have an early pick, like a Jokic. Oh, there's Kyrie in the 3rd. Oh, there's Kawhi in the 4th. Like, uh-oh. I'm going to end up with a totally broken team, but damn, my roto team's going to have some per game monsters on it. Alex Caruso is another option at 89. Again, I didn't put him on the main list because I don't think you have to take him at 89. Tends to go around 100 in most of the drafts I've seen. So he's more of a 9th than an 8th rounder in real life. And same with Walker Kessler, who you flip. He's more of an 8th rounder than a 9th rounder in real life. So flip him if you want. But again, I was going by the Yahoo pre-ranks. And then we just talked about Gafford, Amen Thompson. I'm excited about what both of those guys can do. Gafford is just don't look at the minutes per game. Just look at like what he does in a given 2-week span, and you'll generally feel okay about it. Amen Thompson is more the sort of young, will he break out kind of thing. And then the reason Walker Kessler and Naz Reid made the full list, not the honorable mention, is because I think that these are the guys that could explode right out of the gate. Get that big bop right when everything starts. That's a fun way to start a year. All right, those are the guys. If you got a late draft slot, those are the guys you can hunt for. And, you're not going to get them, but hopefully there are enough options here. That's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 choices. And again, you're gonna have to piece them together a little bit. This team actually, this top 10 is a pretty balanced roster. Free throws, not outstanding because of those last 3 picks that I threw in there. But other than that, like the Poeltl, Kessler, Evan Mobley collection, and Bradley Beal, those guys are sort of canceling out the weak field goal guys. This is a pretty damn balanced roster. I'm trying to think, what is this team not good at? Scoring? I guess the scoring's not great. I don't think it's bottom of the pack because you got Poole, Garland, Mitchell, Harden. I think even Johnson and Mobley and Beal will all be kind of in that like 15 to 21 range. So yeah, scoring perhaps a little weak on this team, but rebounds pretty good. Assists pretty good. I'm ending up with a Chris Paul or a Mike Conley late, so that'll help put a little steam into that. Steals and blocks, both good. Field goal percent, pretty good. Free throw, not as great. And then turnovers, which were ugly and then not ugly and then ugly again, are not that bad because my last 3 guys there don't have any. But again, the goal here wasn't actually to create a team, but just to give you guys nice options to look for that many of them should be on the board when your pick turn comes up, especially if you're playing in a Yahoo league where these guys, the numbers you see are kind of dictating the pace and direction of the draft. Please take a second here on the way out to hit that like button if you didn't do it earlier on, and subscribe. Please subscribe. And Apple, Spotify users, that 5-star review is so important right now. I literally beg of you, please throw that 5-star on it. Let's keep this thing growing. I'm Dan Besbris. That's it for us here on Wednesday. Back tomorrow. We will begin the Dan Besbris Buckets officially tomorrow. We will begin those shows. We also got some other stuff going on over the next few days, and I'll talk about that over on social media. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'll see you soon.